You complain about a 10-minute walk to catch the bus. You check your phone, sigh, and wonder if it's worth calling a ride instead. Your ancestors would have found that complaint almost incomprehensible, but the real answer is far stranger than mild inconvenience, because before wheels, before horses, before a single boat with a sail, your species walked its way across nearly every landmass on Earth, one exhausting step at a time. You are descended from the most persistent walkers this planet has ever produced. Nobody gave them a choice. For most of human history, walking wasn't exercise, and it certainly wasn't optional. It was the only way to reach food, water, shelter, or safety. There were no domesticated horses, no carts, no roads, no ships capable of open ocean navigation for most of that time. And yet, using nothing but legs, lungs, and an almost incomprehensible amount of patience, early humans managed something that still baffles researchers trying to reconstruct exactly how it happened. They walked out of Africa and eventually reached the very tip of South America, one of the most geographically distant points on the planet from where the human story began. How does anyone actually do that without a map, without a destination, without even knowing another continent exists? Archaeologist Michael Petraglia has spent years studying the routes early humans likely used moving out of Africa, focusing heavily on the Arabian Peninsula as a critical corridor. His research, combining archaeological sites with ancient climate data, suggests that these migrations weren't dramatic, purposeful journeys toward a known goal. They were far slower and far less intentional than that. Groups didn't set out thinking, let's cross into Asia. They simply followed resources, water sources during wetter climate periods, herds of game animals, coastlines rich in shellfish, moving small distances generation after generation, sometimes covering less than a few kilometers of new territory across an entire human lifetime. Here's the detail that should genuinely reframe how you picture this. No single person walked from Africa to South America. That's not how any of this happened. Instead, entire populations crept outward in tiny increments, so slowly that within any single generation, nobody would have perceived themselves as migrating anywhere at all. They were simply living, hunting, and gathering slightly further from where their parents had, and their children would push slightly further still. Paleoanthropologist Marta Mirazon Lahr has studied exactly how these dispersal patterns likely unfolded across multiple corridors leaving Africa, including a coastal route hugging the shoreline of the Arabian Peninsula and South Asia. Her research suggests that coastlines functioned almost like ancient highways, offering a relatively predictable, resource-rich environment: fish, shellfish, fresh water where rivers met the sea, that made incremental movement along the coast considerably more survivable than striking inland into unknown territory. Over thousands of years and across dozens or hundreds of generations, these small coastal advances added up to something extraordinary. Human populations reaching Southeast Asia, then Australia, using nothing but their own legs, and, eventually, simple watercraft for the shortest sea crossings. This raises an obvious, very grounded question. How far could one of your actual ancestors walk on an ordinary day, doing ordinary things, not migrating anywhere at all? Anthropologist Richard Lee spent extensive time documenting the daily lives of the Kungsan, a hunter-gatherer society in the Kalahari Desert, tracking exactly how far individuals traveled during routine foraging and hunting activities. His research found that daily foraging trips commonly covered somewhere between 8 and 15 kilometers, sometimes considerably more during extended hunts, all on foot, often carrying tools, water, or food back to camp. This wasn't considered remarkable or exhausting by Kungsan standards. It was simply what an ordinary day required. Multiply that kind of daily range across an entire lifetime, and the numbers become almost dizzying. A single person living 70 years, walking a conservative average of 10 kilometers a day, every single day would cover a distance equivalent to circling the entire planet at the equator roughly 6 times over, entirely on foot, without ever intending to go anywhere in particular. Nobody was trying to set a record. This was simply how life worked before an alternative existed. Here's the twist that should genuinely change how you think about ancient migration. The vast distances covered by the human species as a whole weren't the product of a few extraordinarily long individual journeys. They were the accumulated byproduct of ordinary daily movement, repeated across an almost unimaginable number of individual lives, stacked one after another, generation folding into generation for tens of thousands of years. Think about what that means the next time you glance at a world map and trace the incredible distance from, say, East Africa to the southern tip of Chile. That line represents no single epic journey, no legendary explorer, no defining moment anyone alive at the time would have recognized as historic. It represents thousands of unremarkable days, each one just an ordinary person walking to find food, water, or a better place to sleep that night, slightly further from home than their parents had ever gone, without the faintest idea they were part of anything larger than their own immediate survival. So the next time you complain about a 10-minute walk to catch the bus, remember what that same body, running on the same basic biological engineering, was once capable of doing without complaint, without a destination, and without anyone alive at the time ever imagining just how far their ordinary, everyday walking would eventually carry their descendants. You didn't inherit convenience. You inherited legs built to walk across an entire planet, one unremarkable day at a time, and somehow, without anyone planning it, that's exactly what they did. The more we learn about the past, the better we understand ourselves. If this video sparked your curiosity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Phoenix Primeval for more fascinating stories from history, science, and human evolution. Thanks for watching.